Welcome, and thanks everyone for taking a little time out of your morning, your evening, your afternoon to join us. Really excited about the topic today. Obviously, in the spirit of Women's Month, we wanted to invite one of our partners to share a little bit about herself and her story and what she's doing to drive inclusion for women at tech. And so with that, I'm going to ask Katharine. Katharine, can you go ahead and just introduce Odetta to those that have joined us on the call here and a little bit about what you do at Odetta?
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Patti. Thanks, Allison, Sarin, the entire Switch Automation team. Thanks for having me. I'm here representing Odetta. We are a business process outsourcing firm that works mostly with technology startups, and we specialize in data workflows. And we are powered by highly educated yet underemployed women globally, mostly in the Middle East and South Asia, in regions where flexible, asynchronous work really matters. And essentially what we've built is a virtual work environment that allows all of these amazing, talented women to continue in their careers while still holding the roles that they play in other parts of their life, and so happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Katharine. I have to just ask right at the start, how did this come about for you? Like, what inspired you to even think about a solution like this? And, maybe share a little bit about your story.
Yeah, sure. So Odetta is about 3.5 years old. I would say it's about 4.5 years old in terms of the idea. Well, first of all, I think that I was very open to and looking to start a company that was focused on female economy. That was my lens. I was looking for a business that I could build that would prove some sort of bias wrong, where there was a really strong economic case to make, where that would help women, and where I felt that I could bring something that didn't yet exist. And essentially what happened was my prior background had been in banking. I had started a bank for women in Southeast Asia when I was 25 and had been very attuned to kind of the powers of female economy, and was a big believer in redesigning a lot of products and platforms and services for people who had been excluded based off of their gender or their income. And I was doing research, very focused still on financial products. A friend of mine was on the board of Upwork and shared some stats with me around women on their platform, specifically in the Middle East, that it was 92% male. And for some reason, I knew that women in the Middle East actually were more highly educated than their male counterparts. And so this was surprising to me enough to do kind of a complete deep dive, including a trip to both Jordan and Pakistan to interview hundreds of women. And from there, I was just completely blown away by the magnitude of the problem and also the opportunity of what we could build if we simply removed the 9 to 5 in-office requirement. And so once I understood that we could use technology to build a virtual environment, and that would help a lot of women be able to continue in their careers, then it made sense for me to start the business.
Love it. And so prior to this, let's say it was 4 or 5 years ago, prior to that, did you have any previous connection to this region or this cause?
I would say not to the region. I had spent no time in the region. I had a significant connection to the cause. And this is more on the personal front, but my incredible mother raised 5 children, and she had a son, and then she had a set of quadruplets. And in that set of quadruplets, so that's 4 kids born all at the same time, we were quite a little surprised. I was the only girl. And so I grew up essentially with 4 siblings, all kind of the same age, where my gender was a big part of how I was treated. In the family, outside of the family, there was a lot of messaging that I found quite confusing very early on. And so I developed this lens of trying to understand this. And I would say that lens has kind of been my deeper interest throughout my life, of thinking about why does gender play such a big role in how people believe in themselves. And so it's something that I'm really passionate about.
Love it. I come from a family of four. I'm the youngest, and so I benefited from seeing, a similar experience really with my mom choosing to step away from her career, even though as I was told growing up that, really she had at the time that they started their family had more potential to thrive and was in a higher paid position at the time than my father was. And it always just stuck with me that, why is that? I remember joking with my dad that mom's smarter than you, and you made her quit her job. Why would you do that? And every family's different. We navigate these decisions, with lots of outside internal and external forces around us. And no one way is the right way, but I do find it really interesting, women of our generation having kind of those experiences and what it's leading to. It's leading to people like Katharine and Deb, our CEO and co-founder, standing up and starting these awesome companies and changing kind of the dialogue there and framing up an opportunity for all types of people globally. I love that. And I would encourage anyone listening and watching us to share in the chat if you've got any personal experiences like that, because I think we all probably have some moment along our journey to work where it stuck with you and it helps motivate you every day. I certainly know that I feel that motivation even today. And so, I think I want to share a little bit about switch automation and how I think, some of the barriers to women in tech and providing a more inclusive, and I feel like what I'm seeing from my career and my journey is that sustainability and this passion for the environment is going to be one way that we're going to be able to reach these young women around the world and bring them into these opportunities in tech. We experience barriers here in North America. They're probably very different than the barriers that Katharine, what do you call your teammates? I love it.
The Odettans.
The Odettans. What are some of their barriers to staying in the workforce, and how are you overcoming that again with your model for a new way of work?
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I think there's global barriers. Obviously, this is such a nuanced subject where there's so many directions you can go. But often the Odettans, when they join kind of our application process, the first thing is they've just been told no at so many steps of the way based off of their gender, whether it is not being considered for a role because they are pregnant or they will one day become pregnant, and that is going to be a business barrier for the person hiring them. They are either not allowed to take public transportation, or there's fear due to harassment. And so in-office job does not make sense. There's a lot of stigma of being a working mom. That said, there is really this kind of quiet but powerful tsunami of women who swept across the world who are working. And there's been some really incredible shifts, I think, especially in technology. So I do think that there are many more women who will be working, who are looking to contribute to the household economically, and also will continue in their roles. And so there's an opportunity to build products, services, things like Odetta, hiring them. They're incredible, obviously. And so I think that's really what we're going to see over the next 15, 20 years. It's already definitely started to happen. But yeah, we are very specifically looking for people where an office job, a 9 to 5 is really hard for them to hold given kind of their other roles. And so how can we recreate and reimagine the world of work so we can facilitate that and then get them kind of into a place where they can do both? And then from there, it's really about helping them kind of fulfill all of their potential and then go on to, their next role globally, essentially.
Love it. And have you ever been asked or considered replicating a model like this in other parts of the world, specifically here in North America, knowing that we struggle with inclusion in tech right in your backyard? Have you thought about that, or are you encouraging others to, like you said, replicate the model?
We've definitely thought about it. We've definitely been asked to. We have clients who would like us to build teams in the US. So it's a matter of time. And I think kind of given where we are, our focus is currently on kind of where it would be most meaningful. But the model of Odetta could be replicated in the US. Obviously, there are women where essentially what we do is it's flexible location. So pandemic, that has already happened, flexible hours and then flexible load, and creating kind of an asynchronous environment. And so, yes, I think that makes sense globally, and for women and for men who want to kind of integrate the family in a way that is in the future of work. And I think that this is just kind of, yes, it's very gender specific, but I think it's also within the trends that we're going to be seeing as a society, as communities of people, and as skilled professionals will have more power as they demand kind of the types of experiences that they want in the future.
Yeah, I love that. And I know, since COVID, Switch has really emerged and embraced, hybrid, fully remote, just incredible tsunami of flexibility, which I love. And I think that that's enabling us all to, think differently about our role in work, and be able to be more flexible with our teammates. But I also do sometimes worry about, how that is playing out in personal lives. Is work spilling over too much? So I'm curious, like, in Odetta's model, do you have ways to, make sure that an Odetta, I can't pronounce it, Odettian?
Odettan, yeah.
Odettan.
Mm-hmm.
We're switchers, that's easier. Odettan. Do you have ways to ensure that someone isn't, overworking?
Yeah, it is. It's a big issue, and we've seen this significantly accelerated with just kind of like the dropout of women during the pandemic, as they were the first responders and primary caretakers and all of that. So I think it is a really important thing to address, and not just kind of flexibility, but kind of that there is a at least within, I'll talk about specifically Odettan kind of work environment, there is this just dedication and almost self-sacrifice, which I think as a woman you're taught pretty early on. Messaging starts around 5 or 6, where it's kind of like this sacrifice toward the greater good, and so that's important to safeguard against. Just like having any employee who is doing all-nighters all of the time because they may have not learned personal boundaries, or they may be in an environment where they have other needs to meet. So, but if it's not a sprint, but it's a marathon, like what most of our companies that are building these organizational structures, and we hope to be around for a long time, and our workforce are kind of our number one asset, that safeguard is really important. So we limit the number of hours that people can clock in each day. We've got a ton of mental health checks. We have a happiness officer. We're really focused on making sure that people are not, kind of feel valued, have a voice. They can, if they feel kind of overly stressed, that a ton of ways that they can tap someone else to take over roles. That's very important, especially if you're also taking care of a lot of other people in your family.
I love it. You have a happiness officer. That is great.
Yes.
Is the happiness officer based in the region, or are they, where's that?
In region, yeah. All of our people are Middle East and South Asia, and so yeah, and it's, most people actually haven't met each other. We did all of our hiring. A lot of our hiring happened during the pandemic through Zoom, and but I think you can build an incredible culture without any in person. There's a bond if you create an environment such that the happiness officer does, where really you're facilitating people to bring their full self to work. And if you can create that in a virtual environment, like doing things like this, where people are telling their stories, you can understand people's motivations, and they feel safe and they can be vulnerable. A lot of that then feeds into them kind of also taking care of themselves and knowing that that's what the company wants.
Love it. And I want to think about hiring a little bit. We're out there seeking talent, like every company is right now, it seems. And I'm constantly thinking about inclusion in the hiring process, and what are some ways that you think companies like yours, like ours, like any company, how can we begin that that feeling of inclusion even before someone's actually fully hired at your company? Is there any tips and tricks that you have that you feel like is a good, something to share with the group here?
Yeah, well, I think it's probably the most important thing is that people need to see to believe. And so to the extent that the messaging that you want inclusion and that fits in with the culture, and that's something really desired for authentic purposes, and it's not a marketing thing, and it's really authentic and core to the culture. You can tell from the companies and from the messaging that that is something that the people care about. And so I think that just kind of like shines through. And from my experience, the applicants, they know that, and they know that you've built a place where they'll feel valued because they see people like them. Or they're meeting people who have a full appreciation of, or make them feel kind of, I guess, safe or seen or heard. So that starts in the kind of in the messaging of the company. And I think then also there's a number of things that can happen through the application process. And that's where a lot of biases come up. And I'm not an expert on biases, but I know that that sometimes, there's biases with videos, and there's sometimes biases with kind of questions asked. And so just being aware of kind of the story behind someone's background. So we ask a lot of questions around their personal background, kind of like what they've overcome and their grit story, and really value the fact that someone's come from a certain place to get to where they are, and relative to maybe another group of people that is always getting hired. And then that is, so it starts pretty early on.
Yeah. And do you have like a waiting list of people wanting to come work for you? Is word spreading fast and everyone's, yeah.
Yeah, we have a very long waiting list. And I feel kind of bad about that. At some point we want to, in other words, that I don't want to make it is very competitive to get in, but what we want is we now have this pool of really committed, dedicated women who are looking for what Odetta could offer. And so in the future, we're going to do much more to help those on the waiting list maybe find other opportunities or enhance their skills. But yes, I think we have around 10,000 people in our waiting list. At the moment, we have spots now for around 450 Odettans to be working with our clients. And when we get new contracts, we hire new people. And we too, we have, everyone is female, but we have a lot of diversity metrics that we're looking for in terms of country, in terms of kind of like background, in terms of orientation. So that's really important to us. So beyond gender.
Yeah, I love that. One thing that, it seems so simple, but I realized while I was doing so much interviewing virtually during the real lockdown portion of COVID, I just started turning the camera off. I said, let's just do a phone call. Like I think just like removing that very first initial experience with cameras on and you're in someone's home, and I kind of was feeling a little exposed to myself.
Intimate.
Yeah.
I turn it. I always have my camera off, and I'm also kind of like much more in touch with my body. And so like, I'm trying to kind of like understand the signals of what someone, and kind of like through that virtually, which I think you can do, but it's hard with video. There's a lot of things happening. It's too much. I find it distracting.
Yeah, I know. And even I'm not walking the talk right now. I've also realized that I need to turn my own view off. Like, how long do we have to stare at ourselves all day?
Oh gosh, it's awful. I know.
Like, the studies that will happen from all of this in terms of what it's doing to ourselves and how it's driving or not driving inclusion is going to be really interesting as we move on. Well, it looks like Allison dropped a question in here, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. Oh yes, I forgot to ask you at the start. This is something that we uncovered in our pre-session with Katharine. Can you share the story or the meaning behind the company's name, Odetta?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we're named after Odetta Holmes, who's a jazz musician, who's also known as the voice of the civil rights movement in the U.S. And the story behind it is I was working on a different idea for a startup. I was working at a startup, and then kind of nights and weekends, I was trying to find the idea. And so I had a folder where I had all my ideas. And one night I was listening to Odetta Holmes, and she just has this like, kind of really incredible, powerful voice, and so many of her stories around finding her voice and finding your sense of power. And so I was like, okay, this my process for finding the company will be called Odetta. And then once I got the name, we were going to make it much more kind of focused on Middle East or something that was kind of less US centric. And then we did all sorts of surveys and generated a number of ideas, and everyone just loved Odetta, and we just kept with it. It was something kind of soulful. It had a ring to data, and she really represented an incredible person that we all respect. So that's the story behind the company.
That's great. That's great. And then I want to mention, there's a lot going on right now between, the war in Ukraine. We've got our first African-American Supreme Court judge being, interviewed by a panel. A lot of really interesting thoughts and questions on that. But something I came across on LinkedIn this morning was about this idea that we've been, we're all striving for balance. And I still believe in that pursuit of balance and in keeping some pieces of our lives, a little bit separate from other pieces, perhaps. But the message from this person was about the idea of integration and, should really we be striving for a more integrated life? And it made me think of you, Katharine, and what you're doing with Odetta. And I'm just curious, how could greater integration also lead to more inclusive workplaces?
Yeah, I mean, I love that, because I think sometimes with balance, it's like this, and I sometimes struggle from black and white thinking where it's like either or. So, you're either kind of like building your family or you're building your amazing tech company, and so it's like in one, you have to sacrifice the other. And I think that especially women, but I know that myself, I often had these kind of limiting beliefs around, if you do one thing, you can't do the other. And so the concept of integration is thinking about your purpose as a human, kind of what do you believe your purpose is, and then integrating those different fabrics and people and concepts and ideas in your life in a way that is truly unique to you. And it isn't about thinking, okay, I'm going to be spending 35% of my time on this and 10% on that. It's understanding that also kind of there's a ebb and flow, and there are time for things, and it's being much more in tune with kind of, I think, like your personal journey, what's inside, what kind of like, the people around you, like your own sense of purpose. I think that's important for kind of diversity and inclusion as well, because there's no single template. I think every organization is different. And as long as there's this desire to be a place that is welcoming and to be a place that honors X, Y, Z, I think that you will get what you want. The organization and the organism will kind of attract those people. I do believe in that kind of like energy. And so and then you can have a place where there's a whole group of people who, like, this is their primary focus right now, and they're going to shift into something else. And so we kind of hope, I mean, a lot of our Odettans, they say to me, Katharine, I'm going to be with you we're going to be with Odetta like until we're old. And I'm like, that's fantastic, because you know what? We're building a forever company, and we're going to have to grow and evolve. And there's going to be moments in time when you're out facing some sort of challenge or difficulty, and hopefully you'll come back. And so, so the company itself also has to be very flexible. So I like integration, in short.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And for us at Switch, what I think about is our, again, going back to this flexibility and allowing people to show up as their whole self. And when I first started in a career, I definitely, felt like I was living a separate life, and I wouldn't talk about some of the things that I'm passionate about outside of work, like music or, or sports. Like I just kind of kept those things a little bit separate from who I was at work. I didn't want my boss to be distracted by perhaps the fact that I have these other interests, or heaven forbid, I'm thinking about a family, it was just like not discussed. Yeah. And now, we really want to hear about that. We want to support employees that need to step away and take care of aging parents or sick family members. And, so much can be done when you look at your benefits and what you're offering, and really step back and think about, does our benefit package and our culture really support that integration and that inclusivity that we're striving for. Because sometimes, you miss it. You don't even realize that by not allowing people to, extend a vacation so that they can save money on an airfare coming home could be the difference of like going on a family vacation or not, and little things like that. You're like, work from home on Monday so that you can, take a cheaper flight. Awesome. Love that stuff. And of course you can work and be out in a different place and take care of a family member. Right? All of that stuff, I think, it seems obvious, but it's a reminder for all of us to take a look at those benefits and talk with your chief of people, your human resources, your CEO, your chief of happiness, talk with them about what it is that you need in order to feel supported at work is hopefully the types of cultures that people are creating. And I know we have 1 minute left. I could talk to Katharine all day long. But I do want to be respectful of time. 2 last questions. One is easy. Katharine, how do people get in touch with you?
I mean, I can always be found on LinkedIn, but Katharine at Odetta AI is my email, and feel free to reach out.
Awesome. And then last one is like last thoughts, favorite quote, a hashtag, anything that you want to share with the group as we're cutting out for the rest of our days and heading back to. Yeah.
I think you really captured it with bringing full self to work. That's really what we're doing, full self to the environment. And my prior experiences were of always putting a mask on. And so I'm so grateful to be in an environment where I can be fully myself. And so more, that's what I hope for.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Katharine, for your time. I know you're a busy CEO, and thanks everyone for joining. Again, Switch Automation, we strive to use technology to bring people and planet to the center of building operations. I believe that by bringing the planet piece in and the human piece in, we're going to naturally start bringing more women and more diverse perspectives into technology, and what a great opportunity for young people to see leaders like Katharine and leaders like ours, Deb, at the forefront of this and at the heads of their companies. So really appreciate the time. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be doing webinars. I'm sure we're going to get a little bit more onto our standard topic in the future, but was happy to take a break and talk about these things, because they're just as important as as driving transformation in the built environment. It really does come from the people that we bring into our company. So thanks all. Have a great day.
Thank you.